Excuse me while I whip this out, is Cleavon Little with one of the funniest lines in movie history from one of the funniest movies in history. And it's what happened at a black political conference at the University of Wisconsin in Madison over the weekend. I'm not kidding about this. Madison law professor Ryan Owens organized this event, said the speakers were fantastic and the event went well until people hacked into the Zoom feed. This was one of those hybrid in-person and Zoom conferences. You can hear on the video, it's on YouTube, by the way. We'll maybe put a link in here for you. You can hear one rather white-sounding fellow say, "Shut up, you bundles of sticks." I'll just leave it at that. In yet another display of tolerance and understanding. And there was more along those lines while the organizers tried to figure out how to shut this down, until somebody on the video feed pulled down his fly and started playing with himself right there in this thing. But here is why you might not have heard about this story. This was a black conservative conference, and the protesters, if we want to honor them with that particular word, were, of course, lefties. The conference was called Black Conservatism, the Past, Present, and Future. It's held at Madison on Saturday. It featured Woodson Center founder Bob Woodson. This guy, 86 years old. He's been in the civil rights movement for 60 years. He got his start in 1962 or 63. And he recently wrote Red, White, and Black, Rescuing American History from Revisionists and Race Hustlers. You got to figure a guy who's been in the civil rights movement for basically his whole life, and he's 86, has seen it all. Well, he's certainly seen it all after Saturday's events. Bill, we know that if this had been the Black Progressive Conference and conservative students had done this, that we would have heard of literally nothing else for the past 3 days. Is that about right?
I just want to make sure I understand this correctly. The people that did this were not members of the Black conservative group. They were hacking into it. Write about what you know is what they say, and I guess they were doing their very best to represent the ideals that their political opinions best represent. The beauty of this is they weren't even aware of the fact that that's exactly what they were doing. I mean, really, in a way, it's perfect. It's a perfect metaphor. It's a perfect metaphor for. It's a perfect metaphor for everything. It's a perfect metaphor for the effectiveness of their policies. It's a perfect metaphor for the coarseness of their lives, not just their political discourse. It's a measure of how bankrupt their intellectual arguments is. It's a metaphor for how base and animalistic their instincts are. And the fact that they could get away with it without going to jail is a measure of just how successful they've been at this. This coming crisis I spoke about on Saturday night is because we are heading for a crisis, and the crisis is going to be a crisis of. It's not going to be a civil war between Republicans or Democrats, or even of the cities versus the country, because I'm seeing body cam footage of these very suburban, young, white, wealthy, 20-year-old, mostly women, absolutely refusing to open the door, refusing to answer questions, refusing to obey police instructions, being handcuffed, tasered, taken away, screaming about their rights, crying for their moms. We are going to be facing a crisis that's going to consist of the law-abiding versus the lawless. That's where we're headed. And it's going to be coming from our failing cities, but it's also going to be coming from our failing suburbs. It's going to be a a conflict between decency and indecency, respect versus contempt, and any other particular measure you want to come up with. But this is essentially the equivalent of smash and grab a store, really, isn't it, Steve? It's not really too different from that, is it? You break into an orderly and lawful establishment, and then you try to steal everything that's in that place, and you don't have the slightest bit of shame about it, nor do you have any fear for the
consequences. One of the
break-ins
in Philly overnight, over the weekend, was in an Apple store where the looters didn't even know that you can't steal an iPhone because it won't work. You can't get it activated. They know the serial numbers. Yeah, and you think about it, and
we talked about this in our backstage show.
Is in some ways the pinnacle of human civilization. It's the world at your fingertips. You can slide it in your pocket and take it with you everywhere. And so,
would you? Yeah, please elaborate on what they did when they suddenly realized that they couldn't just walk out with these things.
When the alarms started going off on these phones from the remote activation, they started smashing them. They were smashing one of those pinnacles of civilization. And Bill, it goes just exactly to what you were saying. It's just destruction of civilization because you got nothing else. Yeah.
Because some people just like to watch the world burn.
Scott, the organizer of the event, Professor Ryan Owens, he went out with some real grace. He talked to a local radio station and said these actions were cowardly, disrespectful, and stupid. They also exposed a broader problem we face as society. When some people disagree with other people's points of view, they seek to shut down their speech. We need to cultivate a culture of free speech and an ability to be civil to each other. This kind of intolerance, and that's exactly what it was, must stop. I hope all good people will join in condemning this kind of garbage. But I really should have cut the quote short when he said we need to cultivate a culture of free speech and an ability to be civil to each other, because we used to do that, didn't we?
Well, I'm pretty young, so I don't know what we used to do, but yeah, I have read some history, and it does seem a tad different than two men who disagree with each other so violently as Abraham Lincoln and Stephen Douglas not only rode around together so that they could debate the issues in public places, but actually stayed in the same room and, because of lack of funding, stayed in the same bed many times, basically were bunking together as they went around the countryside debating these great issues of their time that involved slavery and freedom and emancipation and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think that there were at least some people in history that you could go back and see, oh wow, they knew how to conduct public discourse, that they weren't any weaker in their opinions, but they knew how to conduct themselves in a way that would win converts. I don't know who they think they're winning. I mean, I'm sure somebody's ego got stroked there, but I don't think it was the people that they're trying to attract. It's the people who are already with them. Your story reminded me of a piece that I read. It was actually a William McGurn column in the Wall Street Journal about reaction to Senator Tim Scott's debate performance in the largely forgettable debate the other night that the Republicans had. And this is what Tim Scott said from the debate stage. Black families survived slavery. We survived poll taxes and literacy tests. We survived discrimination being woven into the laws of our country. But what was hard to survive was Lyndon Johnson's Great Society, where they decided to take the black father out of the household and get a check in the mail. And you can now measure that in unemployment, in crime, in devastation. If you want to restore hope, you've got to restore the family, restore capitalism, and put Americans back to work together as one American family. So this is what he said during the course of the debate. One of the reactions to it that McGurn captures in the column is the woman who was kind of in charge of the 1619 project at the New York Times, the reevaluation and rewriting of American history, said that you don't need to disgrace your ancestors to have a chance at the Republican nomination, or you should not need to disgrace your ancestors. How he disgraced his ancestors, I don't know. Jennifer Rubin slammed him. Another columnist for the New Republic said it was deplorable what he said. And all he really did was quote statistics in the larger sense of the difference between the number of kids who grew up in two-parent families before the Great Society and after the Great Society. And afterward, it was like 3 times as many kids did not have a two-parent household. So it's not just a racial component here. It is any time somebody stands up and propounds these great ideas which built this country, which made it what it is, which are ingrained and instantiated in our Constitution and our Declaration of Independence. We have a growing body of people in this country apparently who are against it. They are opposed, and they hate to hear it so much that they would literally try to pornify a political meeting in order to disgrace the speakers at the meeting, but instead they just bring shame upon themselves.
Feeling that, which at least in the case of the name callers and the other gentleman, I'm not sure that's the case. Folks, when I read this story this morning, I immediately flashed on the Jeffrey Toobin case from 3 years ago. I don't know if you remember this, but Toobin is a left-wing political commentator. He used to write for The New Yorker. He used to be on CNN. And 3 years ago, back when everybody was on the Zoom calls during the lockdowns, he got busted for masturbating during a New Yorker business meeting with his coworkers. And the thinking was, oh, well, he just forgot to turn the camera off before he started pleasuring himself during a work meeting. That's an excuse? But I thought I didn't buy that, and I wrote at the time for my Insanity Rap column that I didn't think it was an accident at all. I thought it was some sort of semi-public sexual power play over his coworkers. And boy, with today's news, I really think I nailed that one, because that's exactly what these protesters did to this black conservative group, and I think it's for sure what Jeffrey Toobin was doing to his New Yorker workers. And as Bill said, and this is the word we're going to hear and use again and again and again, indecent. As the left continues, mostly the left, continues to descend into total indecency, we're going to see more of these public sexual power plays. And I think it's all wrapped up into a whole host of issues that we've done a lot of right angles about over these last couple of years. So stay tuned and stay decent. For Bill and Scott, I'm Steve Green. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.